Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call together this King George County Board of Supervisors budget work session. We will start off with an invocation by Mr. Granger, and then we will have the Pledge of Allegiance. So you all please stand. Thank you, Mr. Granger. Thank you, everyone. I'll open the floor up now for public comment. Is there anybody here for public comment? You will have 3 minutes to give your public comment. And if you do come to the podium, please state your name and address.
Good evening. Start over. Good evening, Board of Supervisors and community members. My name is Kathy Cutright. My address is 10224 Hancock Circle, King George. And I've been a resident of King George for over 20 years. And I'm also a board appointed member. I'm here on behalf of the students of King George County, and I'm advocating for the needs of our students. Our students deserve to be prepared academically and socially for the workforce. If King George is to have a healthy economy, we must have an educated populace that is prepared to fill the positions for future growth. The proposed school budget will ensure that students will be provided a high-quality education. This year, we are asking for an increase over last year's budget to give an increase in salaries and to fill important positions. Teachers do more than just teach students to read, write, and do math problems. They teach students how to be good citizens. As teachers have previously stated before you, they are stressed due to overcrowding in schools and they're overworked. Therefore, a school budget is needed to fund additional teaching positions in King George County High School and other staff positions. 3 additional reading teachers are needed in our elementary schools. As you probably already know, early intervention is important for student success. A diagnostician and paraprofessionals are needed to address specific needs of students with disabilities. We also need a lead speech pathologist and special education leads in all of our schools. A CTE coordinator is needed to help prepare students for career fields. CTE prepares students for technical skills for success in the workplace. 2 maintenance technicians and a leading building technician are needed. They have a legal duty to ensure the health and safety of our staff, pupils, and site visitors. We know a school building can undergo enormous strain. Therefore, it is essential that the building is regularly maintained to a high standard. Bus drivers, dispatchers, and mechanics are also needed. Bus drivers play an important integral part of our students' lives. They are responsible for the safety of our students, and they are often the first people or the first ones that students see in the morning. In conclusion, it's imperative that a school budget be passed to account for the needed positions. Our students deserve to have a high-quality education, and they need to be prepared for the workforce. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Good evening, Chairman Stonehill, fellow supervisors. Thank you for your service. My name is Terry Rinko, and I come before you tonight as the president of the King George County Council of PTAs and as a member of the CTE Advisory Committee. I wish to thank you in advance for the message you'll be sending King George County Schools with tonight's budget. I've attended several meetings now, and one of the takeaways included, teachers don't come into education for the money. I think we can all agree sometimes you do get what you pay for. No, we aren't Stafford or Spotsylvania, but I didn't think we were Caroline or Westmoreland either. We weren't at the top of the pay scales or the bottom, but instead nestled nicely in the middle. We drew staff residing in Stafford, Caroline, and Westmoreland who chose to work here for the unique quality of King George schools. Spotsylvania now has seen an exodus of 200 employees looking for a more stable school division. Stafford, I've heard, is scooping them up. We might too, if nicely in the middle. Sadly, while waiting for a budget message, we've lost talented educators. The high school athletic director has left, and today my sad trombone player has told me the high school band director is leaving. Who else do we have to lose if we aren't back nicely in the middle? You've heard me talk of Louisa, and I've been told it's not a fair comparison. It may or may not be in total, but there's no reason King George can't have the added value in its CTE program that Louisa's one high school provides to theirs, but for the human resources to make it happen. A little more of an investment than just plugging up holes. Can you imagine how 100 work-based learning experiences afforded King George High's upperclassmen, like the 100 afforded Louisa High's upperclassmen last year, might entice more of our talented students to stay and work close to King George? Isn't that what we want? The CTE Advisory Committee has done its homework, visited and researched the Louisa model. While Louisa High is adding value in year 5, King George is in year 3 of asking. You get what you pay for. Thank you in advance for the message you will send to King George County Schools tonight. May it be a message of encouragement, of stability for our division, and may it convey your hope for the future of King George County School students. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else? Seeing none. Mr. Dines, anyone online? No. Okay. Then I will close public comment. Mr. Miller.
Okay, so we have the agenda that is up there and at your desk as well. Obviously, the first thing that we have on here was, the public comment, but we also have on here a couple other items that we felt needed to get wrapped up. Setting the personal property tax rate would be our recommendation to go ahead and do that tonight. As you recall, you have that set at $3.25. Which is down from the 350. So, I'm sorry. Yeah, I think it would be good to have a vote. It's not, you didn't have to have a public hearing because you were going down, but it would be advisable. If you want to change it, then I guess we would have to do some work, but we hope you don't want to change it, but. That's it.
All right. We have a motion for setting the property tax at $3.25.
So moved.
Second.
All right. We have a motion properly seconded. Do we have any discussion on it? Seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion passes.
Okay, the next item on number 4 was a discussion on the school portion of the budget. I know that the reason that we asked for this meeting, and when I spoke with Chairman Stonehill, it was to try to get this all accomplished by the 21st. And so therefore, we did need to have a meeting before this published, or the one that we'll have on the 14th, which will be your public hearing on the budget. And to work it with the calendar so that you could appropriate on the 21st, which is your approve and appropriate on the 21st, we felt we needed to have a meeting tonight. And I know obviously the issue that was left unresolved was the discussion on the school's budget. And I know that there are some differences of opinion, obviously. If what we have in the budget is the 19,400,000. Oh, wait. Okay. You got something to update me?
Yes, so after last meeting, when y'all instructed me to take a look at it, and because of what was built into the budget on the revenue side, being the governor's introduced budget, I put the figure from Dr. Benson's budget book at the governor's level of the 21,077,870. So that's what's got built into the budget right now. With your discussion on that, whether that's where you leave it or you increase or not, with the thought, I believe Mr. Miller mentioned last week, because even though the budget did pass both the House and Senate today, it's awaiting signing by the governor. And then after the governor signs it, it'll be disseminated to the different state departments. And Dr. Benson and I spoke today, and not sure when the updated calc tools will come out to give us any different figures on the revenue. And so as Mr. Miller mentioned last week, that if numbers change drastically, we might have to come back after the first of the year and amend the budget.
What was that number again? 21?
$21,077,870.
Anybody have questions? Great.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Ms. Hahn, thank you. I appreciate the email with information. So I know that also we have a certain amount set aside for the bond in regards to covering the cost for the courthouse, the communication system, and then firehouse. Thank you. I'm sorry. Apologies, but thank you. Yes, for those three items. And so how much do we have in play for that? Because I know there's a little bit of wiggle room, or now wiggle room is the wrong word, but I know that it's kind of in flux because we haven't gotten the bond and things are
right. So the original calculation was 2.34 million, but then when we came to the last meeting, the numbers are still not finalized for the courthouse, and it's possible that we're going to need an additional 6 million on top of the three. And so the budget that I built with the $109 million total has an additional $6 million built in at a cost of $430,000, and that has been added in as well based on the board's approval last week of the tax rate.
And so I know, again, things are kind of in a little fluid in regards to this. Is there any funds that are not currently allocated to a particular line item?
On the revenue side, I lowered the numbers a little bit based on what our budget needed to be. So there is a little bit of money. And my concern there was to go on the lower side than on the high side, because we all know that some individuals get behind on their taxes and we may not realize all the revenue that we estimate.
Okay.
So I was trying to be conservative there. And if I put the full total based on what the real estate is, then there would be some additional funds.
Okay. And then also, for the cigarette tax, do we do 3 million as our?
I lowered that to 2.5 million. My last estimate was that we were going to come in somewhere between 2.3 and 2.5 this year.
Okay. That's not good news in regards to what we originally thought, but I'm glad that you accounted for it for this coming budget, because I appreciate it. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Yes, Mr. Chair. So, Ms. Hahn, when you refer to page 11 of the school budget binder, are you referring to Fund 250 total cost, the $55,773,965, or what?
I'm referring to page 3 of the revenue stream under the governor's introduced budget, and that's the revenue that I used for the budget, and that comes in at a total with the grant funding of $57,361,372. Which should be his because it was broken out there as to how, based on the projected revenue, what at the governor's introduced budget, the requirement from local revenue.
Okay, so why is that different from the email that you sent us on Wednesday, May 25th? So I'm looking at the email from May 25th that says, also based on the governor's introduced budget, local funding in the amount of $21,077,000. So the dollar amount is there, has been included to bring the schools whole as to the appropriation request on page 11 of your school budget binder. So that's why I asked, because if you look at page 11,
so the 55,773,965 and the 1.587407 should total the 57,361,372 here.
okay. Thank you.
Because it's 250 and 255, no, 252, 250 and 252.
All right, anyone else with questions? So,
You want a question? Ms. Hahn, so the 21,077,870, and then it would, with the governor's of 33,986,95, the governor's, did that have any infrastructure money in there?
The governor's introduced budget did have 2.447, I think.
Okay. And so obviously that would be something to be cognizant of from a school budget perspective, because those dollars would be earmarked for infrastructure.
They could be for infrastructure or for payment of current loans that we already have that was in the last 10 years, I think, is what they were talking about. I was watching the budget hearings this morning while I had other things going on.
Yes.
So some of it I may have missed.
I appreciate it. The only reason I bring it up, though, is because they're earmarked for a very particular item. And so I don't think the schools normally, and I'm not telling them that they have to give us that money to pay for bonds. I mean, obviously it's their budget in order to decide how they want to manage that money. But if they were to do that, that's a one-time cost for the bonds that year, for payment of bonds. And then my understanding is it doesn't sound like that money is going to be there next year. And so if we were to, if the idea is to give us that money and then we give a like amount back, that would be recurring dollars, then that would essentially be making the decision that next year, yes, we would move forward with an additional, however much it is that dollar delta is. Does that make sense what I'm saying? I know that was kind of convoluted. I apologize.
I understand what you're saying, and I'm not really sure exactly how to answer that question other than if it isn't built in for the next year, then yes, the payment towards the bonds would come back on the county, and then there would be a.
But I guess my point is if we then shifted dollars that we would normally send to those bonds because we receive money from the schools, and it was kind of a change in the color of money idea, and that wasn't available next year, either A, you're saying, hey, we need to come up with an extra, whatever that dollar figure is next year just to level fund the schools, or, that's something to be considered. It wasn't so much a question as just something to be cognizant of for my colleagues. And I think we've talked about it before, but it was just a reminder, just so that everyone's aware that could have an impact as well if that was the way to move. And I personally am not an advocate of saying, hey, let's do this swapping the color of money in order to do something like that, just to give my 2 cents.
Is there any ARPA or CARES Act money that's in the budget sent to the schools? Because wasn't there talk about sending a certain pot of money?
From the county's ARP funds?
No, from the state specifically to the schools.
There are ARP funds that go to the schools. And so it's very hard to try to look at the superintendent's memos on the Department of Education. And I know that there has been some money, and I don't know if everything has been handed out. Dr. Benson could probably answer that better. If you know, have you all gotten all of your ARP monies?
I don't have with me, balances or that kind of thing. But as you know, the ARP monies were distributed in different phases. Each phase had kind of different stipulations as far as the use of the funds that were being distributed. Since then, the state has, and I don't know if this is what you're referring to, they have done kind of supplemental distributions for teacher mentoring, but they're tied very closely to specific purposes. And again, it's all one-time funding. So I'm not sure if that's what you're asking about, or.
Yes, because I do remember reading many different about the budget. There was one proposal about taking some state ARP funds and directing them towards the school systems, like extra money. So I was wondering if that was in the budget or if that was just an idea that was thrown away.
No, we've not included any revenue as far as ARP or those types of things.
And do you know off the top of your head how much King George Schools, not the county, received in CARES Act or ARP funds?
I'd have to get you that. Again, there were like 3 or 4 different distributions, and subsequent to that, now there's been at least one I know of as far as mentoring. So I'd have to get each to give you that information. Each distribution, and then if you want to balance, we can do that too.
And it was tied to a specific purpose, each one?
Yes, each had certain uses that you could use it for. The third distribution, for example, which I think was the largest, required 20% being dedicated to learning loss particularly, and there were certain things you could use it for with regard to learning loss. So there are just, as with any federal money, there's accountability for the purpose that it has to be used, and we have to abide by it. That's all.
Well, what my concern was, anything we've used it on, is that going to be now a reoccur? Is it anything that now will be a reoccurring cost in the budget?
Never and never. And I've stood in front of the school board. I think I've stood in front of you and warned that using one-time funding for any type of recurring cost creates, that cliff that then, and Mr. Granger made a good point in a different context as far as the capital or the construction funding. The very same thing could happen if you count on that being part of the school's funding. There's no promise that'll continue, in which case then you'll be left, in a subsequent year having to make a decision to make it whole with just to get to level funding, which could be painful.
Thank you.
I might add, I appreciate the number that you were referring to as far as the projected revenue from the state that you're talking about, the 21,077. That is from Governor Northam's proposed budget back in December. Since then, there have been obviously the two houses budgets, and that's the most recent. In the subsequent revenue documents in your book, you'll see then a different figure, but it's based on those two houses, their proposed budgets. I anticipate it'll fall somewhere in the middle, but those numbers are very different than the governor's proposed budget from last December, obviously, because you've had a change in administration, that type of thing. So please keep that in mind. I don't know that that's I mean, no offense, but I don't know that that's the best number to base your decisions on. You probably want to look at the subsequent two revenue documents that are in that very same book and look at those projections. Thank you.
So if I may elaborate on that, and as I mentioned at the last work session, that I polled my counterparts around the state, around the area who had already approved budgets, and they used the governor's introduced budget with knowing that they would probably have to come back after the first of the year and amend budget.
And I feel compelled to say this, is that a lot of those jurisdictions are larger school divisions, and larger school divisions, it's less, fluctuations in state revenue are less, they're less sensitive, I guess, because they're larger. And so there's a bigger pot that they're working with. In a smaller school division, one way or the other, it's much more impactful as far as the economy of scale with our school division. So, keep that in mind as well.
Questions, anybody? Nothing? Collins, nothing? All right. Anybody want to come up with a motion or for a figure for them so we can have discussion on it?
If I could, Mr. Chairman, I think that I just really, and you and I have had this conversation, the caution of how high you go is a concern to us because of the uncertainty of the courthouse. We won't know until the 21st on the courthouse. They have been given that as a drop dead line that they have to do that. They have to be ready with their guaranteed maximum price. If that doesn't work out, then we have to have other avenues that we can go down. But a concern that I have would be that if you exceed the amount that Ms. Hahn has in here, then that's going to force us to go back into the county's budget or go to some of these capital projects and cut out whatever requisite amount to match what we have at 64 cents. And I think that's a concern that we have. I might, as a possibility that you might consider, is there some number that you are comfortable with approving? And then once you finalize the courthouse cost, something as like Ms. Hahn said, come back after the first of the year or after the start of the fiscal year and reinstitute that back into the school's budget. If that's a number, if there's some kind of a lower number that works for everybody. But I think to really caution you against going higher, and I know that was some discussion at the last meeting, is higher than the 21,077, but clearly we are waiting on the state. We have this courthouse issue, and then, so I think that's one of the things that I would just throw out there and hope frame your discussions.
So the other departments and things would have to be cut for anything higher than what you're all suggesting?
Possibly, yes, sir.
With it being in flux, even with this number, it still is possible something could have to be cut. It's just risk. How much risk do we want to take on? Since there's too many variables in order to really account properly for.
Okay, now I'll go back to my other question. So anybody have any?
Do we need a motion, or do we just need to come to a consensus on what we'd like to advertise for the school budget line item?
Basically, that's what we need, is for you all to give us a figure
Okay.
to plug in to advertise the budget.
Okay, then looking at the numbers with the amount of tax rate at 64 cents, I would be inclined to agree with the 21,077,870. I know it's not as much as the schools would want it, but again, with some of those variables that are still in play, I would prefer not to allocate more and then have to figure out how we're going to make it whole after the fact if there's too many things that come against us. And then we could revisit the budget and make an amendment to the budget after some of these things get firmed up. So that's my take. I would go with staff recommendation. So leaving my colleagues to provide their input.
Mr. Collins.
So, Mr. Granger, from our original discussions, that's been increased. So I'd be more inclined to, my original was 19.4. I would be satisfied at even 20 to have the $700,000 for a little bit of cushion. So mine would be a little lower than yours.
Anyone else? Ms. Minder?
I'm still mulling for a minute.
Ms. Kupko?
So I'm still around 21.2 million. And if you look on the state budget website, the tables, did anyone have time to look at the tables that the House came up with, the conference? No. They're not, but the state has already come up with, for the last one, fiscal year 23 direct aid distribution summary of conference amendments to HB 30 as introduced. And then they have the one for the next fiscal year too. And they have us coming in the composite index at 0.3805. If you follow it to the end, the estimated CONF conference amendment, them working together to amend the budget. Estimated distribution for fiscal year 2023 is $33,960,000. I'm sorry, $33,962.75.
That's about 26,000 less than what's in the governor's.
Than what was in the governor's, the $33,986,095, right?
And I did see that, but I forgot where I saw it. So, yeah, I'm in the $21 million range still. I'm just not willing to come down to $20 million if that's what's in the conference amendment here. And this is the House. That's where I'm at.
What was the name of that House bill again, so I can look it up?
I'm happy to just pass my laptop right on down the line. So what's open right now is fiscal year 23. And if you look at King George and you slide all the way across, it has all the calculations, and the very far right column has conference. So kind of in conference, what the committee has gotten to, what they think our state aid will actually be.
What's the comp supplement?
That's
There's
a
a-
compensation supplement for the pay increase.
So that's an added on, or did they add, or?
That was already in all of the budgets. They had a difference of opinion between the House and the Senate.
Oh, reduction, okay. Yeah, I was just. Right, I'm gonna pass it back.
It's the middle one in the white.
It's this one right here, that's the number right there. And if you go all the way back, it's King George and lists. Right there. Locality composite index, ADM, base budget, House bill as introduced, and then you follow it across all of the categories.
Ms. Hahn, just for clarification again, just for, help everyone. I'll wait till you're done looking at that. Were you done? So my question is, if we use the number $21,077,870 with everything with the 64-cent tax raise, we would be able to fund everything that is in our budget. Or are we going to have a shortfall?
The number that I put in, the 21,077,870, funds everything as based on the governor's introduced budget. However, in light of what the information that Ms. Kopka just presented, there's a shortfall of $25,820. And as I mentioned earlier, I didn't put the full amount that is possible for the revenue. And so we could come up on the revenue by that $25,820,000. So we would have it based on what Ms. Kupka was presenting. That would be $21,103,690. Is that the, at that, but as we are, it's funding everything except that 25. But if we wanted to go up based on the information that Ms. Kupka presented. That would be 21,103,690. And I still have enough revenue that I can increase the revenue line to cover that amount and fund the county after the cuts that we've already made to the county budget, as well as the possible addition for the courthouse and the two projects.
So that would fund how much as a possible bond issue? About 6 million or?
The bond issue was previously like 27 point, I believe it's 27 points. No, what we originally put in here was for the 3 projects was got it listed. It increases whatever was in here. While I'm trying to find that, was an additional, it takes it from 27 to 33 million in bonds. He put in here, it wasn't in here, it was in his presentation. I need to find Mr. Lau's presentation real quick. So for all 3 projects that we had estimated prior to finding out that the courthouse was going to cost even more, Mr. Laux had built in $6 million for the courthouse, which we know $6 million is not enough. We're going to need another $6 million. $11.8 million for the radio system, $10 million for fire stations, for a total of $27.8 million. When you add the extra $6 million, it takes the bond up to $33.8 million.
And you're saying, explain to what?
And so when we originally talked about the projects based on this, and Mr. Laux came, he had stated that we would need $2.34 million per year for debt mitigation. And then he ran some quick numbers based on an interest rate of 5%, because interest rates are rising, of an additional $430 million for the extra, $430,000 a year for the extra $6 million.
And what was the total again? You said
33.8 million.
33 point. Thank you. And that's for all 3 items?
That's for all 3. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Mr. Dines? Mr. Dines, would you mind sliding all the way to the left for me? Is this using an ADM of, is that second column an ADM? I'm just guessing. What was the proposed 4405?
4405.
Okay.
Here, that's 4386, and I'm messed up. The 4386, I believe, was what the state estimated.
Okay.
And when you're doing your top school, it's from how much funding you'll actually, how much funding you'll actually receive. The superintendent has the capability of changing that ADM based on what his estimate is. So this is based on 46.
43, 46.
Okay. I don't know how to point this thing. Right there. So if our ADM is 4406, that number will be, 4405, that number all the way to the right will be higher.
Okay. Thank you.
Question, the ADM, and Dr. Benson might be able to confirm this, currently is calculated by average daily attendance or actual daily attendance? Because I know it's different. Because of COVID, there was some adjustment. Is that correct?
You are correct. The COVID years were just kind of obviously anomalies. So typically what will happen is between the end of September and March, each day there's a session of school, they take basically a picture, is the way I explain it, of the number of students who were attending that day. So for every day, there's a picture, and then that period of time, they average all of those pictures together to get your average, what they call the average daily membership, which is separate from enrollment. So it's a very good question. It's not just your enrollment, it's who was in school, the average number of students who were in school across all of the days between the end of September and March.
Right, and that's what's, does the calculations, from what I understand, change in 2024, or are they going to stay the same? The ADM?
I've not heard anything.
Okay.
The 4405 number. So when we created this budget, we based it on the very same number we expected to hit at the end of March. You know, we created this budget in February, so we didn't know. So come March, we did not hit, I don't have the exact number with me, but we were short of the 4405. So, you know, there's a hold harmless, you know, as far as the state budget for the COVID years. I don't know that that's necessarily in this next budget or not, but at any rate, that just gives you some context, because that's a good question. We put 4405 as a placeholder because that's what we expected to hit this year. We didn't, we're less than that, you know, maybe 20, 25 students less than that. I don't know next year, you know, we have to wait to see who comes.
And I think, speaking of the hold harmless, I think that they did put some funding in for hold harmless, but not so much for COVID as it is for, you know, uncertainty about what was going to happen with the grocery tax and other things. So they didn't want the schools to feel the effects of decisions that were made at the state level.
All right, Mrs. Bender, do you have time to come up with a possible number you're more comfortable with, or?
What do we have so far again? It was 20?
20, 70, 870, Mr. Granger, 20, Mr. Collins, 21.2 for Mrs. Cupcutt.
So 20, some of the figure, I'm just trying to get, we've been throwing around a lot of numbers here. Okay. 21,077?
Yep.
You said
That
21.
was the number based on the governor's introduced budget and an ADM of 4405.
Okay. I would say either a flat 21 or a 21.1 to be flat instead of all the extra numbers, but that would also affect.
So may I ask a question, Mr. Chair?
Go right ahead.
So Ms. Hahn, you're saying we're looking at $21,000?
Based on the numbers that are in this up here,
25.
There's a difference of 25,820 between the governor's introduced numbers that were in the workbook there.
103. Roughly.
Right, and that's based on 4386 or 46, and I don't know if that's maybe a closer ADM for you, Dr. Benson.
I think Dr. Benson, he was saying he was estimating about 25 off, and so that's more like 60 off.
Mm-hmm.
So
the number there will come up based on the ADM. But that was, I guess that they just wanted to have a quick analysis of it.
Yeah, and I apologize. This got posted at 1. I looked this morning for it and it wasn't there, and it got posted at 1:10 p.m. it says, so.
Mr. Stonehill, how do you feel?
I mean, like Mr. Collins, I was looking at that 19.4, and when I came in here, I was thinking that, I would go up to 20. I really didn't want to go over 20 due to the flux that we're in and, with the pricing and prices going up every day. And I think the numbers that for the courthouse and everything, I think that's even kind of low of what we're going to be spending overage on all these projects here. So I'd be willing to go along with Mrs. Binder's of 21. I would go up to that, and I don't think I would go anything further higher than that. I wish I could, but I don't feel like I want to go over that. I would love to fund the whole thing, but we just can't do that. And we are in such flux right now. I would rather have a little extra for the county, the department, and these other projects going in. We level funded them last year, 18 million. They've got $1.5 million left over right now for the end of June that they have left over. So I would go to 21. That's as high as I would go. So
Although I was at a different number, which makes it very easy to reconcile. Ms. Binder, I heard you say either 21 or 21.1. I'll do 21.1.
21 even.
21 on.
That's
February.
that's $1 million more than.
Mr. Chair, may I?
go ahead.
I'll do 21.1. In the spirit of compromise, I appreciate everyone being willing to do so. I want to reiterate, this is just as important as public safety is for our community. And we have a responsibility to provide for the health, safety, and welfare of our community. And this is one of the many ways we do that, by giving the school board the money they need to provide a public education to our children. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Collins.
So that is a historic amount. $3 million raised in a year is an historic amount in King George County, plus the state amount. They've never seen that kind of money go into the schools. Even back when they did the pay compression or the pay, where we're trying to compete with the other folks, I forget what they call that. So I think 21 is too high, but I would compromise with that.
Mr. Chair, may I?
Go ahead.
Thank you, sir. So I think we had 21.1. I'm not trying to force it on everyone, but I think we had 3. I'll ask Ms. Binder, though, because I don't want to put words in your mouth. Will you still okay with 21.1?
I'll even make a motion right now.
Okay. So before you do, if you don't mind, I wouldn't mind. So Ms. Kupka, I appreciate what you have to say. And I don't mind going back to reevaluate the budget after we figure out our bond. And if there is more money that's available, I don't mind looking at that and seeing if there's more we can give. So I don't have a problem with that. It's just risk, and it's not a risk I want to take on. So that's why I would prefer to stay at that number. So, but I appreciate your concerns and your points, so thank you. That's all I had.
Since I don't usually make motions, so if I make this incorrect, please help me out. So
Do you need a motion or just consensus?
They just need
We just need
consensus
to, and
took my thunder away.
for that number to be put in for the advertisement for the public hearing.
Well, I will make a motion to put in for advertise for the public hearing of an amount for the school budgets as 21,100,000.
Second.
Right, we have a motion properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any nays?
I haven't come up with a vote yet. Sorry. I guess it would be a yay.
Nay? Okay, we got that clear. So there were no nays. Chair votes aye. So that motion will pass and we'll advertise 21-1.
And so then I guess the next steps was, do we still want to go with the date of the 14th? We have enough time to let the advertisement be out there. It has to be out for 7 days. And then we could have the public hearing on the 14th, and then the 7 days pass before you can take action on it, which would be the 21st.
Is it exactly 7 days? Like, do we have to wait till the hour? I don't want to put us in the bind again. I know that because advertising, you're like, we're going to get out the next day. And so then that's 6 days. It's the problem if we'd waited till the next board meeting. I just want to make sure we don't, because that's right on that line. So.
And that's you have to wait 7 days after the public hearing.
Okay.
To take action.
So 21st is fine.
The 21st is fine.
Any point on the 21st.
And because your meeting doesn't start till 6:30, the public hearing is going to start at 6.
Okay. Just want to make sure.
Okay, we'll do that.
And that is at the sheriff's office at 6 p.m. Tuesday the 14th.
Can you send an invite for that as always?
We always, yes.
Thank you.
Yes, 6 p.m. Mr. Dines indicated that there'll be a separate link for that, for the people that want to follow from the online format. So, but we're ready to go.
Okay, great.
So tonight meeting wasn't on the website on the Board of Supervisors.
My understanding is it was. Was it?
I looked at it.
It was on the public
Homepage.
calendar and the main calendar, newsletter. It wasn't on the Board of Supervisors page, but I did put it on this evening, like at 5:15 or whatever.
Well, just we're having a problem with this. Most people don't even know there was a meeting tonight, and it didn't show on the calendar added on when other things are added on to other meetings. So, this is problematic. We need to get this squared away. I've discussed this several times. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, staff, for all your hard work, numbers crunching, and like always. So do we have a motion?
I move to adjourn until Tuesday, June 7th at 6:30 p.m. in the boardroom.
We have a motion properly seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion passes. We are adjourned. Thank you.